In a blood-soaked scene, surrounded by screams and scattered corpses, a king with cold, sharp eyes boldly ends the life of anyone who dares oppose him. This is absolute power that can decide a person's fate. You see, he is King Grey, the mightiest emperor in human history. Suddenly, King Grey feels like he's drowning in an endless sea. A voice suddenly echoes, telling him to find the light Arthur the end of the path in his next life. The emperor opens his eyes as a newborn baby. He sees his parents looking Arthur him with eyes full of love. They name their son Arthur. His father, Reynold, wants Arthur to say Papa, but his mother, Alice, giggles, saying the boy is still too young for that. Arthur wonders who these people are. Could it be that he died in his previous life and was reincarnated with all memories intact? Or what else? He can't believe it. After having ruled the world before, the gods transformed him into a useless newborn like this. But Arthur doesn't hate this life because both mom and dad take great care of him. Still, Arthur is unhappy about wearing diapers and feeling scared that someone might hurt him. He struggles so much that he ends up pooping his pants without realizing it, and his mom even praises him. What a big poop, such a good boy. Arthur is so embarrassed he wants to cry, just wishing this weird dream would end. But, sadly, this is the harsh reality he must face from now on. Putting that aside, Arthur witnesses something even stranger. His father can summon magic to boost physical strength, and his mother has miraculous healing magic. Arthur is super curious because these are things he never knew in his past life. With nothing else to do, Arthur observes everything around to absorb as much knowledge as possible because knowledge is the sharpest weapon above all. Reynold returns home from hunting covered in dirt. Arthur wonders if everyone in this world is allowed to wield weapons. If so, the outside world must be dangerous and needs careful preparation. However, no matter how frustrating it is, he still feels happy to enjoy these priceless warm moments with his loved ones. In his past life, Arthur couldn't even sleep peacefully because enemies tried to assassinate him every night for weeks or maybe even months. Eventually, Arthur learned to escape quickly, moving in front of a mirror to check what his face looked like. After mastering body control well, Arthur even sneaks out of bed when his parents aren't around, then slips into the study to learn more about this world. The continent where Arthur lives is called Decadon, consisting of 3 kingdoms: the land kingdom of the dwarf tribe, the Eleonora kingdom ruled by the elf tribe deep in the forest, and finally the Sappan kingdom, where humans dominate the land. Arthur's kingdom has a monarchy, but the throne is inherited differently from the past world, where anyone could seize the throne by assassinating the previous king. Arthur continues searching for a magic book with a very cute look. He realizes that technology here is still very primitive compared to his old world, and magic is the source of power people here call mana. Mana can only be passed from generation to generation, with a very low appearance rate. Mana exists in 2 forms for casting. First, enhancement type, which boosts all body abilities using mana. Second, summoning type, which can release and control mana. Arthur will. Reading this, Arthur suddenly recalls his mother's ability earlier, clearly proving she is a summoner. The key to controlling mana is the mana core that exists in everyone, which most mages can only awaken during puberty. If they do it well and master it, they can become true mages. Arthur realizes this is quite similar to the concept of ki that he is very familiar with. However, he still doubts whether this knowledge can become a useful weapon for him. Arthur, everyone, something most mages can only awaken during puberty. When they master it, they can become true mages. Arthur realized this was quite similar to the concept of ki he was very familiar with. However, he still doubted whether this knowledge could become a useful weapon for him. Arthur tried to harness the ki within his body, almost succeeding when his mother interrupted. She picked him up and stared Arthur his face, making the little king a bit anxious. But then she quickly smiled and asked, "Did you poop your pants again, Arthur?" Very familiar. However, he still doubted whether this knowledge could become a useful weapon for himself. Arthur tried to harness the energy in his body, just about to succeed when his mother interrupted. She picked him up and stared at Arthur his face, making the little king a bit worried. But then she quickly smiled and asked, "Did you poop your pants again, Arthur? How could that happen?" However, when the foul smell rose, the young emperor felt hopeless, thinking this body was like a prison. Alice's mother continued recording memorable moments in her son's growth. Although very pleased, the only thing that troubled her was that she had never seen Arthur smile even once. Arthur was now 2 years old and was being taught sword swinging by his father. Seeing his son doing so well, the father boasted to his wife but got scolded for being reckless, wondering why he was teaching such dangerous moves to a child so early. Arthur, watching his dad get harshly scolded, felt a bit worried about their future married life. Then, his mother carried him into the market, and he was thrilled to see everything around him, especially things that didn't exist in his previous world. Arthur even got a chance to observe magic up close. He was so captivated that he fell asleep without realizing it. Alice then carried her son back to their room, talking about the joy she felt whenever she saw him sneak out of bed to read and his curiosity every time they went to the market. Maybe he inherited that from his father. Alice concluded that one day her son would leave to explore the world, but she hoped he would have a peaceful life. The next day, Arthur stood on the windowsill watching his father practice magic, feeling lucky to have a living textbook to learn from directly. He watched Reynold lift several stones off the ground but seemed a bit disappointed because the magic was too simple. Arthur that moment, his mother suddenly came up from behind, saying that his father had just started, encouraging Arthur to observe more carefully. Just then, Reynold increased his magical power and performed some advanced lifting skills, which completely fascinated Arthur as he watched. Immediately, he realized his father was an enhancer. He was excited to try it himself, but his daydream was cut short when his mother reminded him it was bedtime. When, carried back to his room, Arthur saw a book on the shelf and immediately pointed to it, wanting his mother to let him read. After showing his adorable face for a while, even the great emperor's mother softened and allowed him to read for a bit. Over the past 2 years, Arthur gained vast knowledge through his effort to create his own mana core. He began controlling the flow of magical energy, to gather countless latent mana fragments in his body into one point. This was an extremely difficult task, but, through perseverance, Arthur's hard work was finally rewarded. His parents were outside, while their son gathered the final piece of his mana core. Suddenly, a terrifying explosion blew up the entire house, forcing Reynold to rush in and shield his wife, receiving a severe burn on his back. Both were in utter panic because their son was still inside. They rushed into the collapsed house, and were stunned to see Arthur floating in midair. Both were speechless, seeing a child under 3 years old already awaken the power of a mage. They just stood there watching Arthur slowly descend to the ground. But Arthur that moment, the roof began to collapse, and since he was still a child, Arthur couldn't dodge in time, but luckily, his parents quickly shielded and rescued him. Time really chills your feet off. His mother burst into tears, making Arthur realize these two would do anything to protect him, a sense of safety the great emperor had never felt in his past life. Then Arthur also burst into tears and spoke his first word, calling, "Mama." In happiness, in his previous life, he was about to punish someone who tried to assassinate him, seen as a grave crime to be punished most brutally. The common people and the court present said King Blaine Glader was merciful and would do the best for the accused. That was why they brought his wife and son there. Although he begged for mercy for his wife and son because they were innocent of this crime, King Grey still used his sword to personally send off the whole family back into exile. Currently, Reynold wanted to gift Arthur a pair of gloves for combat training, but his son refused. Right now, Reynold wanted to gift Arthur a pair of gloves for combat training, but the boy refused because he preferred using a sword. Even Arthur, a young age, Arthur's combat skills were no joke, so the father began channeling mana into his wooden sword, seeing it as a challenge Arthur could handle. So the father started channeling mana into his wooden staff, treating it like a challenge Arthur couldn't ignore. Immediately, he imitated and infused mana into the wooden sword, then ran up and kicked his dad's ass, leaving the old man stunned. After Reynold told his wife they needed to find a proper teacher for their son, Alice disagreed. She thought he was still too young. Dad explained that a 4-year-old breaking a mana-enhanced staff was unthinkable. His talent was far beyond, so he had to find a worthy master in the city. But his wife remained firm in her refusal, because their son was just too adorable. So the couple started arguing loudly again, giving the poor guy a headache. He understood that emotions sometimes cloud people's vision, so he pretended to be innocent and asked why not the whole family go. Once they heard that, the couple realized their kid really was a genius, so they made peace and started packing. Seriously, no words. A few days later, a group of adventurers came to pick up Arthur in front of his house. They introduced themselves as Arthur, pleased to meet them. These folks formed a team called Twin Horns, which his parents were once members of. The red-haired man, resembling Adam, was Adam. The cheerful girl, with 2 large lumps on her chest, was Angela. Her hobby was feeding Arthur fruit by mouth. Every time they met the big, somewhat clumsy uncle named Jinshi. The cold-style lady was Jasmine, and finally the tribe's archer, your forger. Today, the group would escort Arthur's family to Sai City to find a master. What caught Arthur's attention was how primitive transportation here was compared to his old life's spaceships. Although sitting hurt his butt badly, Arthur felt it wasn't too bad. The place they were heading was Sirius City, quite far from here. However, shortly after departure, they were surrounded by a pack of prairie wolves. This world was truly dangerous, but this was nothing for the Twin Horns challenge level. Adam, your forger, and Jasmine were all mentor enhancement types. Meanwhile, Angela and Jinshi seemed to be conjurer summoners. Arthur observed and had to admit they were strong, so he needed to push harder. Arthur night, everyone enjoyed a delicious grilled meat meal together. Yet Reynolds suddenly noticed he was injured on his arm, so his wife wanted to heal him, but strangely, everyone else immediately became alert around them to protect her. According to Arthur's knowledge, his mother was a special type of mage called an emitter, with unique healing powers. Because such mages were rare, they were easy targets for kidnappers. This was why Alice and Reynolds decided to return to the countryside to grow vegetables and fish, hiding their powers. Suddenly, Adam asked to borrow little Arthur for some stretching. Judging by everyone's smug faces, Arthur was speechless. "Hey, I'm just a 4-year-old kid, you know?" Setting that aside, Arthur started activating mana not only in the wooden sword but also in his legs. Surprising Adam greatly, the boy's speed immediately skyrocketed, rushing into continuous attacks. The problem was Arthur's body was too light, so recoil threw him far away. Luckily, kind Aunt Angela quickly used magic to catch him. The others swarmed to scold Adam like he was a bad kid. He protested, saying that kid was a monster-level beast, not what everyone thought. Meanwhile, Jasmine suddenly blinked over to ask Arthur how to move like he just did. Arthur was a bit surprised, but realized she was the type to relentlessly pursue her goals. The journey went smoothly. Arthur trained with everyone and learned many new things, also sharing his Naruto-style running technique with Jasmine. This wasn't part of his plan, but she stuck close every day. To thank everyone, Jasmine gifted Arthur a small knife for his birthday. The other aunts were surprised since Jasmine was usually hard to approach. Mom flexed a bit, saying it was because her son was just too adorable. Then as they prepared to continue, Alice started feeling nauseous. Morning sickness was hitting hard, especially after tiring nights, in both legs, which amazed Adam. The boy's speed instantly skyrocketed, launching into a continuous exchange of moves. The problem was Arthur's current body was too light and got blasted away by the recoil. Luckily, their kind Aunt Angela quickly used magic to catch him. The others then swarmed at him, yelling Arthur him like he was their own son. He was so frustrated, insisting that kid was a monstrous beast, not what everyone thought. Meanwhile, Jasmine suddenly blinked over to ask Arthur to teach her how to move like he just did, managed to cast a spell in time to catch it. Others swarmed around, yelling Arthur at him like he was a lost cause. He was so frustrated, claiming that kid was a monstrous beast, not what everyone thought. Jasmine suddenly blinked in to ask Arthur how to move like she just did. Arthur was a bit surprised but realized she was the type who would chase her goal relentlessly. The journey went smoothly. Arthur trained with everyone. He also learned a lot and shared his Naruto-style running technique with Jasmine. This was unexpected since she stuck close every day. To thank him, Jasmine gifted Arthur a small knife for his birthday. The other ladies were amazed because Jasmine was usually distant. Mom even flexed a bit, saying it was because her son was just too adorable. Then, as everyone prepared to continue, Alice suddenly got sick again, throwing up classic morning sickness. How could she handle it with nightly bouts like this? The group was rushing when suddenly a rain of arrows fell. Your forger immediately warned that mountain bandits were ambushing, so everyone dropped into battle stance. Worse, the bandits were too many and had surrounded the whole mountain area, led by a dark-skinned guy wielding an axe who ordered, "Kill the Arthur, and capture the women alive." Without hesitation, both sides charged into fierce combat. There were just too many of them, and they had completely surrounded the mountain area, led by a guy, Jinshi holding an axe who ordered, "Kill the Arthur, and the women, huh? No, catch them alive." Without hesitation, both sides immediately charged Arthur each other. In terms of individual strength, Ben Arthur was superior, but being outnumbered made exhaustion start to show. When one man faces dozens of bandits, Reynolds, protecting his wife and kids, was beaten badly by the leader and thrown directly into the carriage where Arthur was hiding. The mother and son tried to run to help him, but Reynolds stopped them to hide Alice's true power. Reynolds urged his son to get his mother to run away as fast as possible. He knew Arthur had the ability to fight, so he told him to use that power to protect his mother. He also revealed that Alice was pregnant, making her protection the top priority. Arthur finally understood everything and infused mana into his legs to pull his mother away. The leader thought this was ridiculous and ordered his Arthur to chase after them. Reynolds then charged in to buy time for the mother and son to escape. Meanwhile, others gave their all to support Arthur in getting his mother to safety. Arthur ran while unable to stop thinking about how everything had changed. Was this the instant karma for someone who had once taken countless lives? But Arthur refused to give up and kept pushing forward to fight for survival. Just when he thought he was far enough, a bandit hidden above suddenly ambushed him. Arthur pushed his mother away but was hit himself and sent flying down a deep ravine. Still, he didn't intend to die alone and used the gift Jasmine gave him to drag the bandit down with him. Angela and Jinshi tried casting spells to help, but failed. Alice screamed in pain, seeing her son freefall into the abyss. That moment, Arthur couldn't stop thinking about the strange feelings he was experiencing. In this life, he had achieved nothing, yet his heart felt full. He finally understood the plea of the man he killed in his past life and why both his mother and father had cried. It was miraculous how when trying to save his family, a person could let go of doubts and hesitation. The tears falling Arthur, the thought of never seeing loved ones again were extraordinary. All the emotions he was feeling now were something completely new. He uttered his final words, truly wanting to be a big brother. But then, the main character's aura saved Arthur's life. Stunned and wondering, who am I? Where is this? Why am I still alive? A sinister presence approached and said, where is this? Why am I still alive? Then something very evil came close and said, good morning, welcome to the Endless Plains. Currently, Arthur faces a terrifying monster inside a cave. He tried a surprise attack, but the monster simply flicked its fingers and flung him away. The monster said it wasn't evil, and only wanted to be friends with little Arthur. Then it slowly walked to the cave wall, and picked a glowing yellow fruit. Arthur didn't understand anything, and tried to stand up to negotiate but then heard a painful cracking sound. Though he had many questions, the black monster said it wouldn't answer until he ate all the fruit. After eating his fill, Arthur asked if it knew anything about his parents' current situation. The monster explained it couldn't leave the cave but could create a magic observation to show that Arthur's parents had completely defeated the remaining bandits. Arthur couldn't be happier hearing such good news and thanked the monster profusely. The monster introduced herself as Sylvia. It turned out she was very kind, something he had never experienced before. He uttered his last words that he truly wanted to be an older brother, but the protagonist's aura saved Arthur's life. Just as he was stunned, wondering, who am I? Where am I? Why am I not dead yet? Something seemingly evil approached and said, where is this? Why am I still alive? Then something seemingly evil approached and said, good morning, welcome to the Endless Plains. Arthur is currently facing a terrifying monster inside a cave. He tried a surprise attack, but the monster just snapped its fingers and flung Arthur far away. The monster said it wasn't evil and just wanted to be friends with little Arthur. Then, it slowly moved to the cave wall and picked a glowing yellow fruit. Arthur didn't understand a thing and tried to stand up to negotiate but heard a crack that hurt enough to cry. Although he had many questions, the black monster said it wouldn't answer. Not understanding a thing, tried to stand and negotiate but heard a cracking sound, painful enough to cry out. Though with many questions, the dark monster said it wouldn't answer until it finished all the fruit. After eating his fill, Arthur asked if it knew anything about his parents' current condition. The monster explained it couldn't leave the cave, but could create a magical observation to show that his parents had completely defeated the remaining bandits. Arthur couldn't be happier hearing such good news and thanked profusely. The monster introduced herself as Sylvia. Turns out she was incredibly kind. Over the next few days, Arthur stayed in the cave, eating and resting to heal his wounds. According to Sylvia, this cave lies on the western edge, within the fairy tribe's forest. This is the territory of wild beasts and outlaws. However, this doesn't mean he'd be stuck here forever. Sylvia can open a spatial rift to send Arthur back home, or he would be trapped here forever. Sylvia could open a spatial rift to send Arthur home. Arthur leads somewhere safer than this forest. But creating that rift would take a lot of time. So Arthur had to wait. He picked up a branch and started swinging it to hone his sword skills. Another day passed, and though Arthur grew fond of Sylvia, he still didn't know much about her. All he knew was that Sylvia looked like a scary monster but was extremely kind, and seemed to be hiding something. After finishing sword training, Arthur sat down on a rock and began practicing his mana abilities. Sylvia was impressed that such a kid already had a mana core, but she was sure he had never been taught how to use it properly. Sylvia held out her hand, and gathered a large amount of magic power in her palm. Arthur was amazed that Sylvia could store mana while casting spells. If he could learn that skill, no doubt, he'd become insanely strong. But before Sylvia taught him, she asked what he would do if he gained such power. Arthur recalled how his family and friends were nearly wiped out by a ruthless band of robbers. So, he said he'd use his power to destroy anyone who dared to steal what he treasured. However, Sylvia didn't like that answer and flicked Arthur on the forehead, making him fall hard onto the ground. Sylvia said she would never teach a kid whose face was filled with hatred. She wanted to teach Arthur a lesson, so she raised a finger, pointed at Arthur's forehead, and said this hand could easily pierce his skull with just a touch, or it could gently caress his face. Then she asked the kid which one he wanted. Of course, Arthur didn't want to die, so he answered that he wanted the gentle touch. Sylvia said humans are easily ruled by anger and hatred, so she didn't want to see the life she saved become someone like that. That moment, Arthur thought this person seemed to know everything about him. Then Sylvia asked again, "What will you do with your power?" This time Arthur focused, then answered that he wanted to use his power to protect those he loved. That answer made Sylvia very pleased. Meanwhile, above the cliff, a monster resembling Sylvia seemed to have noticed her return to King Gray's past. In the old world, even though he was a king, it didn't mean he held all the power. The real authority belonged to the council's senators, while King Gray was just a war tool, summoned whenever they needed brutal, violent acts. Those acts were unwelcome, so King Gray expressed his desire to abdicate. Soon after, he was assassinated and reincarnated. Here, after some training, Arthur finally mastered mana concentration skills. He could clearly feel the power difference and rushed to Sylvia to thank her for teaching him. However, Sylvia suddenly sensed someone approaching and pushed Arthur into a pile of rocks, telling him to stay silent. Arthur didn't understand what was happening, so he peeked outside and saw the monster from before. It appeared Sylvia knew who it was, and the monster seemed surprised to find her here but didn't want to waste time, so immediately demanded Sylvia come with him. Sylvia, of course, refused, so he attacked right away. Arthur wanted to jump out to help, but Sylvia used telepathy to tell him not to go out. The monster tried to convince Sylvia to cooperate, or else he'd be forced to let go. But Sylvia would rather die than obey, so she started gathering mana to reveal her true form. It turned out Sylvia was a white dragon, and in this form, she could wield much greater power. She unleashed a massive energy blast toward the monster, forcing it to struggle to defend. But it said that was a foolish move because given its old wounds, Sylvia wouldn't survive if she used too much power. That move was stupid because with his old wounds, Sylvia couldn't survive using so much power, but she didn't care and said she had lived a long and happy life. Sylvia pushed the monster into the wall, but it got up and pushed that monster against the wall, but it jumped up and started launching a flurry of attacks. The monster threw another strike, but if Sylvia dodged, it would hit Arthur's hiding spot directly, so she used all her strength to cast a time-freezing spell. When everything around became motionless, Sylvia called Arthur out. With no time to explain, Sylvia immediately opened a spatial rift herself. It was prepared in advance, but due to severe injuries and not enough time to complete it, the gate couldn't take Arthur straight home. Still, she trusted Arthur could survive on his own and find his way back thanks to the skills she taught him before leaving. Sylvia gave Arthur an egg along with one of her feathers, telling him to wrap the egg carefully in the feather and protect Arthur at all costs. She also engraved her will onto Arthur's body as a mark glowing on both his arms. Arthur was utterly confused when suddenly, he felt energy flowing all over him. But Sylvia didn't have the strength to explain anymore, just said that one day he'd figure out how to use the dragon's power himself. Sylvia also apologized, admitting she could have completely teleported him back to his family before. But she got selfish because she was too happy to have someone to talk to. Arthur felt heartbroken because he knew he didn't have enough power to save Sylvia from death. He didn't care if she was a dragon or a monster, he just knew Sylvia was a precious family member. Arthur said he saw Sylvia as his grandmother. Sylvia was surprised Arthur called her that and was moved to tears. Though saddened that she'd never see Arthur again, time was running out, so she gently pushed him toward the space portal. Arthur understood the situation, grabbed the gift Sylvia gave him, and stepped through. But Arthur, the last moment, he changed his mind and begged Sylvia, come with him. However, she couldn't, so she closed the portal and let Arthur go. Time continued, and Sylvia was struck by the monster's attack, severely wounded. She collapsed to the ground, but the monster still didn't believe she was dead. However, when it approached to check, Sylvia suddenly unleashed all her remaining energy and fired one final blast, incinerating it and everything within a mile radius. While Arthur was being teleported away, he heard Sylvia's last words echoing in his mind. He was deeply saddened by what happened. Sylvia comforted him, saying things like this will keep happening. That's why Arthur must change and turn these moments into smiles. Sylvia didn't expect him to change instantly, but to take it step by step on that great journey. It turned out Sylvia also knew about Arthur's past life, and advised him not to let his heart be filled only with anger and hatred. She prayed that light would continue to shine on King Gray's new life. Shortly after, Arthur woke up on the ground. He swore to fulfill Sylvia's wish, but first needed to find a way out of this forest. Arthur heard a terrified scream and immediately sped up, rushing forward while carefully protecting the egg. As he jumped from tree to tree like a monkey, Arthur heard voices. But when he landed on a branch above, he realized it was actually 4 bandits who had kidnapped a little girl to sell as a slave. Meanwhile, the bandits threw the girl into a carriage and prepared to leave the forest. Witnessing this, Arthur was filled with rage but remembered Sylvia's advice, calming himself and started following them until sunset. Arthur could have chosen the safe route by tracking them to the human town unnoticed, but Arthur, that moment, he overheard the bandits planning to kill the girl before selling her, so he decided to take down the group. Using horned wolves to pull the carriage, Arthur crafted a plan to use the wolves themselves to create chaos. He threw a stone to provoke them, causing them to howl furiously. Then one bandit stepped forward, heard voices from a group of people. But when he landed on a branch above, he realized they were actually 4 bandits who had kidnapped a little girl to sell as a slave. Meanwhile, they threw the girl into a carriage and prepared to leave the forest. Seeing this, Arthur was filled with rage but remembered Sylvia's advice, so he calmed down and started following them until sunset. Arthur could have chosen the safe option to quietly track them to the human town without being noticed, but Arthur, that moment, he overheard the bandits planning to kill the girl before selling her, so he decided to take action against the group. Using the horned wolves pulling the carriage, Arthur devised a plan to use those wolves to cause chaos. He threw a stone Arthur them, making them howl loudly. Then one bandit stepped forward to cause chaos. You threw a stone, making them curse loudly. Immediately after, a bandit stepped forward and kicked to silence them because the cursing could attract other animals. Arthur took the chance to sneak up from behind, then enhanced his right hand into a blade, sending him off silently. Then he grabbed the bandit's knife and with a bit of hesitation, killed the second slave trader. The third one sensed something was off, but before he could react, Arthur slashed his leg, and he immediately screamed to alert the leader about a kid sorcerer. But the leader paid no attention, only seeing the future prospect of selling Arthur for a big pile of money. He also threw his weapon aside to avoid damaging the hot item, but the experienced leader saw through Arthur's plan, then kicked him away. He easily grabbed Arthur with one hand like a doll and declared this was the end for him, but Arthur quickly cast a fire spell to burn the thief's left leg, driving him mad and making him lose the will to capture. He shouted he'd sell the brat's corpse to some weird collectors. While the leader was ranting, Arthur used his little flying knife technique to finish off the thief immediately. Then Arthur calmly dealt with the last survivor to erase all traces. Arthur entered the carriage, removed the blindfold from trembling little Tessia, and told her they could go home now. She didn't understand what was happening and got even more worried seeing Arthur's battered body. Arthur knew kids aren't used to brutal bloody scenes, so he quickly covered the thieves' bodies before she could see. He told her the bad guys died in an accident. Surprisingly, the innocent kid believed him without doubt. Arthur gathered some useful items for the journey ahead, then prepared to leave, but the girl grabbed his hand, begging him not to leave her alone in this dangerous forest. She said her parents told her the forest's tree demons eat kids. Honestly, those stories were just to scare kids into sleeping. Anyway, Arthur realized he had no choice but to escort Tessia back to safety. She used her sense of direction and said her home was to the south, ironically the opposite direction of Arthur's parents. Arthur asked why she was kidnapped and learned she got lost chasing butterflies in the forest. Arthur remembered being imprisoned Arthur, her age in his past life. Not wanting her to suffer the same fate, he decided to escort her home. However, Tessia didn't want to keep traveling on the horned wolves because, according to her, if separated from the wild too long, they would die. The brave girl untied their collars so the wolves quietly returned to the deep forest. Arthur felt relieved, knowing he saved a kind-hearted girl, which made him even more determined to get her home safely. The next morning, the 2 brave kids started crossing the forest on foot. Tessia introduced herself as Tessia and asked Arthur how to address him. Arthur guessed Tessia was probably hungry, so he handed her a bowl and told her to sit and eat. Even if she wasn't hungry, she should eat to keep strength because the journey ahead was long. After serving Tessia, she wrinkled her nose. Arthur, the strange smell of the food. Arthur told her he had added a few leaves to make it tastier, but it still didn't suit her taste. He suddenly realized he never had a real childhood. For him, meals were just energy refills, not enjoyment. Arthur asked about the city where Tessia's tribe lived, and Tessia said it was the Eleanor Kingdom. Since her parents were often busy, Tessia mostly stayed with her grandfather and the servant. She then showed Arthur the fireflies flying around, explaining that in Eleanor people often use them as signals. Tessia also said she couldn't wait to awaken her magic and study under a master, recalling his past life when he was also imprisoned Arthur the same age as the little girl. Not wanting her to suffer the same fate, he decided to escort her home. However, Tessia didn't want to keep using the horned wolves to travel because, according to her, if separated from the wild for too long, they would die. The brave girl untied the leash from their necks so the wolves could quietly return to the deep forest. Arthur felt relieved, knowing he had saved a kind-hearted girl, which only strengthened his resolve to bring her back safely. The next morning, the 2 brave kids began their journey on foot through the forest. Tessia introduced herself as Tessia and asked Arthur how he wanted to be addressed. Arthur guessed Tessia must be hungry, so he handed her a bowl and told her to sit down and eat. Even if she wasn't hungry, she needed to keep her strength up because the journey ahead was long. After serving Tessia, she wrinkled her nose. Arthur, the strange smell of the food. Arthur explained he added some leaves to improve the flavor, but it still didn't suit her taste. He suddenly realized he'd never had a real childhood. For him, meals were simply for energy, not enjoyment. Arthur asked about the city where the Tessia tribe lived, and Tessia said it was called the Kingdom of Eleanor. Because her parents were often busy, Tessia mostly stayed with her grandfather and the servant. She then showed Arthur the fireflies flying around, saying that in Eleanor, people often use them as signals. Tessia also said she couldn't wait for the day she awakened her magic, now has a real childhood. For him, meals are just to fuel up, not for enjoyment. Arthur asked about the city where the Tessia tribe lives, and Tessia said it's called the Kingdom of Eleanor. Since her parents are often busy, most of the time Tessia stays with her grandfather and the servant. Then she showed Arthur some fireflies flying around, saying that in Eleanor, people often use them as signals. Tessia also said she can't wait to awaken her magic so she can study under her master. So the two of them talked and walked until nightfall, then set up a tent for her to sleep. Arthur suddenly heard the howl of the horned wolves he had released earlier, worrying they might attack him. He regretted not killing them when he had the chance. Tessia came into the tent and told Arthur he should sleep early. She also said her grandfather once forbade her from sleeping with the opposite sex. But this time Tessia promised to keep it secret and not tell anyone. However, Arthur said he could just sit outside, so Tessia makes an excuse that sitting outside will attract wild beasts. Wanting her to feel safe, Arthur agrees to sit inside the tent. Inside, Tessia says her grandfather once said human Arthur are perverts who like having many wives. Arthur was speechless because this little girl didn't even understand what pervert meant but believed it as truth. Afterwards, the two fell asleep, and the next morning they continued their journey through the extremely tough mountain and river crossing. This made Tessia forget all about the slave traders. However, the journey was still very long, and honestly, Arthur was very worried about his parents on the road. Arthur suddenly felt a sharp pain in his manicore. Tessia thought he was just tired and hurried off to find herbs. The pain grew worse, but Arthur didn't tell Tessia because he didn't want her to worry. Suddenly, one of the horned wolves appeared. Arthur, the worst possible moment. Tessia returned with the herbs, but Arthur shouted for her to run because he thought the wolf would attack. But contrary to that, it dropped a small wild boar on the ground and left. Tessia smiled happily, saying it was a reward for good kids, roasting the meat afterward. Tessia took the first bite and was overjoyed, because it had been a long time since she ate something that delicious. Indeed, when a kid sees a good meal, they are happy and enjoy it fully. Arthur also admitted it was so good, he wished he could eat it every day. Tessia even offered Arthur a string of mushrooms, saying they were very nutritious. But Arthur's biggest mistake was trusting this girl. Not only did they taste awful, but they also gave him severe stomach pain all night. When he returned to the tent, his eyelids started to droop from exhaustion and stress. Arthur just wanted to sleep, but Tessia kept talking about books she read about humans and dwarves from her childhood. Although she really wanted to visit there, Tessia was scared because she heard there were bad people everywhere in the kingdom. So the people in Eleanor trusted no one, especially humans. Seeing Arthur nodding off mid-conversation, Tessia gently covered him with a blanket and imagined herself as his big sister. The next morning, they continued their journey. Arthur was exhausted but still smiled, so she wouldn't worry. When they neared the gate leading to Tessia's village, she was super happy. Tessia immediately stepped forward to open the way and extended her hand, telling Arthur to follow her. And in just a blink, they appeared before a path lined with 2 rows of giant trees. Before they could understand what was happening, a group of armed guards suddenly appeared. They said they had tracked Tessia's trail through the teleportation gate. Then without a word, they restrained Arthur. The guards held Arthur tightly to investigate why he had trespassed here. Arthur called Tessia's name but got no response, so he began to suspect he had been betrayed. He also blamed himself for being careless and not wary because of her innocence. Recalling, when they were walking and chatting, Tessia said she would only call him Arthur so they could become close friends. Arthur wondered if all of that was meant to make him let his guard down. When the guard ordered Arthur's execution, Tessia was shocked and demanded they stop. The guard said Arthur was very dangerous because he was a violent human. Tessia explained he was her lifesaver and ordered them to release him immediately, but they still insisted Tessia had been brainwashed by this savage, so they hesitated. Suddenly, a blue light appeared, accompanied by an old man who ordered his subordinates to release Arthur. He introduced himself as Reincarnated, the former king of the Kingdom of Eleanor and also Tessia's grandfather. Virion expressed his gratitude for saving his granddaughter and revealed that Tessia was the princess of this kingdom. Arthur was very surprised because she had never mentioned this before. Then Tessia's parents appeared, and she ran to hug them, crying because she was very scared being alone. When King Blaine later saw Arthur, he was quite surprised, also reveals Tessia is the princess of this kingdom. Arthur is shocked because she never mentioned this before. Then Tessia's parents appear, and she runs to hug them, crying because she was scared being alone. When King Blaine later sees Arthur, he's surprised to see a human in the heart of the capital. He immediately orders the guards to detain him, but Virion stops them and explains that whether he's a savage or not, this man brought Tessia back safely. Tessia defends Arthur, saying he saved her and shouldn't be treated badly. Then Tessia approaches Arthur and says they will return to the castle together. Though hesitant, King Blaine later seems to dote on his daughter and doesn't oppose her decision. Virion senses a mysterious power from Arthur and wants to get to the bottom of it. Then, old man Virion also sensed a mysterious power from Arthur and wanted to get to the bottom of it. Then, the two kids went together to the castle. Arthur couldn't help but be amazed by the kingdom's beauty, but he noticed all the residents looking Arthur him with contempt. It seems that between the Tessia race and humans there's always been lingering hostility from past conflicts. He suddenly recalled Tessia's empty stares. When the guards caught him, Arthur decided not to let his guard down anymore. Just stepping into the palace, a group of maids greeted Princess Tessia. She instructed them to show hospitality to her benefactor. The girl also reassured him that Arthur wasn't a bad person, then started thinking about the dishes the servants would prepare shortly. All gathered in the meeting room to hear Arthur recount everything. Tessia noticed the tense atmosphere and suggested having tea and some sweets while chatting. The father introduced himself as the current king of Illinois, named Alduin, and Tessia's mother is Muriel Arelith. Arthur also introduced himself. From a small town in the Sapin Kingdom, he felt honored to meet King Blaine Glader of the Tessia race. King Anduin remarked Arthur was quite well educated for someone from such a remote place. Arthur continued telling about how he lost his family due to a bandit ambush. But when he reached the part about meeting Tessia, the atmosphere instantly changed. King Anduin, hearing his daughter was kidnapped by slave traders, was furious and openly despised humans. Arthur then spoke up to explain that slave trading is a profession, and not a race. Virion wondered if Arthur had bargained or begged them to release Tessia. Arthur replied that he did neither but used magic to rescue Tessia. One of the guards got angry and drew his sword, thinking the kid was lying. Virion immediately ordered the soldier to lower his weapon, warning him not to argue again. Tessia, though not seeing Arthur fight, recounted the kidnapping herself. She heard they planned to sell her because Tessia girls are highly valued. Arthur saw that everyone was starting to believe him, so he expressed his wish to return home to Sapin. King Blaine later asked if, after witnessing their hostility toward humans, he still wanted help. Arthur argued that the Tessia's current behavior was no different from the cruel and vile humans they despise. Anduin said the hatred between the two races is unbreakable, but more importantly, the teleport gate to Sapin only opens during the Tri-Race Council meetings, which won't be held for another 5 years. However, he couldn't let a human like Arthur wander here long, so he would assign soldiers to escort him home. Arthur was overjoyed knowing he could finally return, but Arthur that moment, he was hit by a sudden pain from his mana core, things worsening. But Arthur didn't understand what these sudden pains meant. Then Arthur went somewhere quiet to soothe the pain somewhat, knowing he had to figure out its cause. Suddenly, he thought of his parents, silently wishing they had returned home safely. He looked toward Tessia happily with her parents and thought how he wished to go home and feel such emotions too. Tessia saw Arthur and quickly ran over to apologize for her family's rude treatment of him. Arthur didn't take it personally, knowing well the deep hatred between humans and the Tessia race. He missed his family terribly and blamed himself for causing everything about his hometown. Arthur is filled with joy knowing he can finally go home, but Arthur that moment, he's tormented by pain from his mana core, and things are getting worse. But Arthur doesn't know what these sudden pains mean. Afterwards, Arthur goes somewhere quiet to help ease the pain, but he knows he must understand the cause of this condition. Suddenly, Arthur thinks of his parents and silently hopes they have returned home safely. He looks over Tessia happily with her parents and thinks he wishes he could also go home and to be immersed in such feelings. Tessia sees Arthur and quickly runs to apologize because her family treated him rudely. Arthur won't accept this because he knows the deep hostility between humans and the Elven clan. He misses his family and blames himself for everything that happened. His parents faced many troubles, and he couldn't protect them. He wonders if they were happy to see their lost son again. Tessia holds Arthur's face to comfort him. Of course they were. I myself was very sad when I heard Arthur was about to leave. But then they see beautiful glowing lights spreading around. Tessia excitedly explains these are the fireflies she mentioned before. Arthur still wonders about Tessia's gaze when the guards captured him. It was so clear, as if her heart had grown cold. While deep in thought, something suddenly darts toward Tessia, but Arthur quickly catches it. He rushes to find the culprit and discovers it's Viralcontent. He wonders why Viralcontent would do that. Did he want to kill his own granddaughter? But then Arthur realizes the projectile was just a few fireflies. Understanding the situation, Viralcontent somewhat trusts that this boy really did kill the slave traders as he said. Then, he creates a wooden sword and throws it to Arthur as a challenge. They don't say much, but immediately move Arthur incredible speed, though Viralcontent is faster and stronger, easily breaking the wooden sword with his bare hands in an instant. However, a shard suddenly flies toward Tessia. Luckily, Arthur catches it by throwing away his sword Arthur the last moment and unleashes a powerful strike. Arthur the old man then charges and hits him hard on the forehead, knocking him out. In the first round, just before starting the second, the granddaughter runs up and pinches her grandfather's butt, telling him to stop bullying her friend. Viralcontent sees the kid is truly a rare genius, and hence he wants to take him as a disciple. Arthur is honored, but still needs to go home to report his safety to his parents. Stopped it, not letting anyone bully her friend anymore. Viralcontent saw that kid was truly a rare genius, and hinted he wanted to take him as a disciple. Arthur felt honored but still needed to go home to report his safety to his parents. So the old man asked if there was a way for his parents to know, would he be willing to stay and train with him, right? Arthur's heart pounded hard, feeling like something was crushing his chest about to burst. He even saw a beast inside his body. Could this be the embodiment of his inner fear? While struggling with that feeling, he was suddenly awakened by Tessia. Arthur woke up to see her sitting on top of him, so he gave up. Tessia angrily makes him get up and change clothes immediately because her father is waiting outside, and asks if Arthur really plans to stay and hang out with her for good. Arthur isn't sure yet since he wants to contact his parents first to see if they're okay, and even teases her by calling her a princess, which clearly annoys her. Tessia insists he call her Tessia, to be more casual, just like she calls Arthur, Arthur. Outside, King Blaine Glader is trying to convince Reynold to reconsider taking on a disciple and allowing a human to live here. The former king doesn't even want to listen, even if this causes scandal or goes against Tessia tribe traditions. He just says he really likes the boy, then gets in the car. Tessia runs up to say Arthur is a benefactor to the family, but it's scolded like a clueless kid. The current king doesn't want to say more, and just lets the two kids get in the car to meet a friend. Arthur switches to calling his master sir, which makes the elder very happy, while the princess lies down and sleeps soundly, because she usually sleeps in Arthur this hour. As the sole heir of the kingdom, Tessia grew up very lonely, always building walls to keep others Arthur at distance. But when she's with Arthur, she always smiles, which makes her grandfather incredibly happy, feeling like it's been a long time since he last saw his granddaughter smile so brightly. So he offers a few words of thanks. Arthur is quite surprised to find this old man so trustworthy. After a while, they arrive. The former king coming personally like this shows the person inside is no ordinary one. Just as Arthur wonders who it could be, the old man kicks the door open loudly, calling out to those inside. The two kids didn't expect this but still got no response. Just as they were about to leave, an old lady opens the door and slams it right in their faces. Consider that a lesson, showing up all high and mighty. Her name is Renia, an old friend and also a special mage. Arthur guesses she might use magic like his mother, or even something more powerful. Arthur bows in, thanks for the welcome, and explains his wish. Seeing his politeness, Renia invites them in without treating them like strangers. Inside are stacks of books of many kinds, showing she has knowledge superior to almost anyone. The most curious thing is how she can help him contact his parents. After hearing how Arthur addressed the old man, she laughs, guessing he must really care for the boy. She reveals she is a prophet, and knew from the start that Arthur is someone very special. Although there are things even she cannot see, Renia senses fragmented pieces of past and future. Arthur came not only to contact his parents but also to know how they are living now. The first thing he is asked to do is focus intently on a bowl of water and clearly picture his parents in his mind. One hand she uses to receive memories from Arthur, the other projects images onto the water's surface. He tries to feel like he's really talking to his parents. His mother always radiates warmth and furrows her brow whenever worried about him. His father's eyes are full of emotion, with a friendly nature and a charismatic leader's aura. They have moved to a new home, trying to forget the pain of losing their son. Coincidentally, today is also Arthur's birthday. Just thinking about that makes their faces clearly sad. When they first heard their son fell into a ravine, the couple was plunged into despair. Luckily, good friends stood by them offering comfort and encouragement. Plus, since there's still a baby growing in her womb, they tried to get through that difficult time. Both sides were blaming themselves when suddenly they heard their son's voice. He said he's safe and currently in Illinois, the kingdom of the elves. Arthur explains. He's using special magic, then suddenly heard her son's voice. He said he was still safe and currently in the Illinois kingdom of the elves. Arthur explained he was using a special spell to communicate and really wanted to come back immediately, but currently couldn't. He also explained his body was still weak and needed time to heal. However, his parents didn't need to worry because the situation wasn't too serious. After recovering, he would return immediately and hoped his parents wouldn't blame themselves for what happened. Hearing this, his mother was so moved she burst into tears, not knowing when they could contact each other again. So Arthur told both of them to take care and stay strong, to take care of their health. He also said he loved his parents very much. Tears kept flowing with happiness, knowing they were safe. After everything, once his wish was granted, Arthur turned to call the elder his master. A few days later in a conversation, Tessia blamed her parents for Arthur's situation. Her grandfather also sided with his granddaughter, so the last two children had to agree. If they feared gossip, they could just say Arthur was a disciple personally trained by him. He himself promised to take full responsibility if anything happened. King Blaine Glader then also apologized and welcomed him as part of the family. Seeing such a sudden change, Arthur didn't understand what was going on and looked Arthur the two of them. He guessed this king was easily swayed by his daughter and son-in-law, so he quickly made peace. Tessia then asked permission to take her friend out for a walk. Since the palace had already announced it, no one dared to cause trouble with Arthur. This was the first time he could enjoy the feeling of free time like this. However, some troublemakers still showed up here, like a kid, the same age who often teased Princess Tessia. She was advised not to get involved with people like that to avoid getting hurt. Arthur, however, teased by pretending to be surprised Arthur the blonde kid's name. He even thought it was the name of some kind of animal. Hearing this, the kid got mad and cursed Arthur as an ignorant fool. Seeing the human kid keep hitting, the others got so pissed, they almost lost it. Tessia just laughed even though she didn't fully get Arthur's wordplay, but Ferrith still felt mocked and angrily challenged the princess. About to advise because even nobles shouldn't act arrogantly, but when his honor was insulted, Ferrith insisted on settling the score. People around were quite entertained, because a duel here was a form of honorable combat. So Tessia stepped up as the referee. Just as expected, once it began, Ferrith got punched hard and lay motionless. Arthur pretended to be surprised because the fight ended so quickly. Tessia happily pulled his hand and left, making Arthur increasingly attracted to her. He also took the chance to enjoy some peace before the upcoming training because his master emphasized training path would be very tough. Arthur must learn to tame the beast inside him. This was likened to immersing in a boiling hot solution. In short, the future would be extremely hard, but if he had enough will and determination, his master believed he would overcome everything to achieve deserved success. The first lesson was not to mind the pain coming from the mana core. Arthur excitedly told Tessia that before coming here, he had always trained with his family and a special grandmother figure. The two kids motivated each other to grow and improve. Time passed, Arthur had always tried his best. No matter how much physical pain tormented him, a few years later from now, Arthur had grown much stronger thanks to the devoted care of his friend. Today, Tessia's parents had to travel far for an important meeting. Both of them, as usual, practiced daily with Master Reincarnated. Since he got up early to prepare food without a thank you, the princess angrily launched a fierce attack. Seeing the kids full of spirit, the master decided to start the training right away. Arthur by then was much stronger and more determined, making the master think it was time to move to the next step. Reincarnated wanted Arthur to review magic basics. Once mana was stabilized, he could learn one of the elements: earth, water, fire, or wind. Which element he accepted depended on his race traits, like the elves had wind, and could also master earth and water. For humans, they could learn all four elements, but the angry lord then launched a fierce attack. Seeing the kids full of spirit, he decided to start the training right away. Arthur was now stronger and much more determined, making his master think it was time to move on to the next step. Reincarnated wanted Arthur to review his magic knowledge. Once his mana stabilized, he could learn one of the elements: earth, water, fire, or wind. Which element to accept depends on the characteristics of each race, like the Tessia race is wind. Besides, they can also master earth and water. Humans can learn all 4 elements, but usually each person excels in only one. Some can control multiple elements, but that's very rare. Tessia suddenly asked why Arthur hadn't trained his body when using magic before. Like her, Reincarnated answered bluntly that it was too weak. However, the beast's will inside the mana core was extremely strong. To this day, occasionally, Arthur still suffers pain. The beast's will causes imbalance between soul and body, which is the reason for his pain. But now Arthur is strong enough to endure and merge mana with his body, so the master will proceed. With training, awakening mana Arthur 10 was considered a talent, so clearly Tessia was very special. Since then, she insisted that Arthur trained fighting with her every day. Then the master began to awaken the beasts while still sleeping inside the mana. If successful, from now on, he wouldn't have to worry about the pain anymore. And he would truly tame the beast just like the master once did. The master warned that the mana would be burned. It sounded dangerous but was probably just a slight burning sensation. Then the master transferred the beast's energy from his own body to Arthur. Immediately, the beast's will and the mana awakened, but it was too powerful, beyond what both could handle, and they were thrown back. Arthur also suffered shock as the huge power exploded inside him. Reincarnated was completely stunned, unable to believe that the beast's will inside this kid was that of a dragon. His mother fainted and slept soundly until evening. The master stayed by his side, worried and wanting to understand the bond between him and the beast's will. Arthur didn't say much about Sylvia, simply stating that it was a dragon. Hearing this, the master was shocked because that legendary creature was said to have vanished thousands of years ago. Hard to believe, he couldn't deny it after seeing it with his own eyes. He also warned Arthur never to reveal this to anyone, as having a dragon's will could spark unnecessary power struggles. In addition, there was news that in just 4 months Arthur would leave this place. Although originally the teleportation gate was to open in 2 years, the 3 kingdoms had started youth exchanges, so this was his chance to return. Arthur felt a little sad hearing this. Life here was good, and Tessia was his only friend. Leaving her was tough. The master patted his head, telling him to rest early because from tomorrow, the training would get tougher to prepare for his return. Tessia understood and wasn't worried. That night, Arthur tossed and turned, unable to sleep with only 4 months left. Suddenly, the egg Sylvia had given him cracked open, and though he was worried, he was surprised to see an incredibly cute creature inside. Obviously a dragon, though a bit unusual looking. It was very smart, understanding everything Arthur said immediately. Just as he was happy, the little dragon bit him hard, hurting him all over. Immediately, a strange mark appeared Arthur the wound, symbolizing that the little dragon had accepted Arthur as its master. This special bond also allowed them to communicate telepathically without words. Arthur decided to adopt the little dragon and named her Sylvia. As a tribute to Sylvia, then both fell asleep from exhaustion. The next morning, Tessia stopped by the room and was surprised to see an adorable little black creature. She immediately picked it up and cuddled it, despite Sylvie struggling non-stop. Moreover, its master acted indifferent, making the little dragon even more helpless. Since rare creatures like this were unusual, Tessia kept trying to coax Sylvie. Arthur had to remind her not to look Arthur the new pet like a predator, then took it to show the master. The master was also amazed to realize this creature was a dragon. Arthur, this rate, he might one day be shocked to death by his badass disciple. It seemed the fusion with the beast's will was why the egg hatched. The dragon's will inside him can cause unnecessary conflicts between factions. Besides, there's another piece of news. Arthur will be leaving this place in just 4 months. Although the original plan was 2 more years. Before the teleport gate opens, the 3 kingdoms have started youth exchanges, so this is his chance to go back. Arthur felt a bit sad after hearing this. Life here was good, and Tessia was his only friend. Leaving now really makes it tough for him. The master patted his head and told him to rest early, because starting tomorrow, training would get more intense to prepare for his return. Tessia understood, so there was no need to worry. That night, Arthur tossed and turned, unable to sleep with only 4 months left. Suddenly, the egg Sylvia had given him cracked open, and he was worried Arthur first but surprised to see an extremely cute creature inside, obviously a dragon, though it looked a bit unusual. It was very smart and immediately understood whatever Arthur said. Just when he was happy, the little guy bit him hard enough to hurt. Right away, a strange mark appeared, Arthur the bite wound, a symbol showing that the little dragon had recognized Arthur as its master. This special bond even let them communicate telepathically, without words. Arthur decided to adopt the baby dragon and named her Sylvie, as a tribute to Sylvia. Then they both fell asleep from exhaustion. The next morning, Tessia stopped by and was surprised to see the adorable little black creature. She immediately scooped it up and cuddled it, despite Sylvie struggling non-stop. To make matters worse, her master acted indifferent, leaving the baby dragon even more helpless. Since it was rare to see such a strange creature, Tessia kept trying to coax Sylvie. Arthur had to remind her not to look Arthur the new pet like a predator, then took it to show the master. He was also shocked to realize this creature was a dragon. Arthur this rate, he might just die from shock because his badass disciple keeps surprising him. It seemed the egg hatched because of the beast's awakened will inside. Also, Arthur didn't have to worry too much. Since dragons are legendary creatures, no one would believe they're real, just think Sylvia is a rare animal. Now that the beast's will was awakened, today's training would be completely different. He had to train both his monocore and beast core simultaneously. The best way was to train directly with the master, who transformed into a beast form, instantly sending a terrifying pressure Arthur could feel. In that state, he couldn't sense anything because Viralcontent was like a gust of wind, impossible to fight back, so Arthur had to give up. Fighting like that would be a death sentence. The beast inside the master was a leopard. There, you can't feel anything Arthur, all because Viralcontent is now like a gust of wind, unable to resist, so you just have to give up. Fighting like this would definitely mean death. The beast inside the master is a shadow leopard that has reached the peak in wind manipulation, and can also use advanced magic to control sound, so each step makes no noise. However, the weakness of this state is that it consumes a huge amount of energy. After explaining, the two started training Arthur, a basic level. A few days later, Arthur had mastered the beast's will inside him, so the intense chest pain completely vanished. Besides that, he also caught up with his master's speed. During the short time left here, he wanted to put his heart and soul into training non-stop. Also, Arthur took the chance to enjoy the remaining fun time with his close friend. One day, the two went out for a walk and happened to run into Ferrith, just like a few years ago. Since that punch, Ferrith never forgot Arthur's name, but Arthur had no memory of that kid, which drove Ferrith crazy. He challenged Arthur again, and just like before, got punched and fell flat on the ground. The princess had to step in and reintroduce them before Arthur smiled, shook his hand, and they made peace. Actually, after being punched, Ferrith really wanted to play with Arthur, but only now did the two friends get the chance to hang out with him. We were also told the three of them would go socialize with youths from other kingdoms. Tessia, being a princess, wasn't allowed to go for safety reasons. Teased by Ferrith as weak, she immediately gave him a solid hit to teach him a lesson. Arthur had to pull her away, reminding her a princess shouldn't hit commoners, but then he remembered he wasn't really in a position to say that either. Tessia was sad because Arthur was about to leave and she couldn't go with him. On top of that, she got scolded and burst into tears, then ran away. Sylvia saw this and told her dad to do something, so that night Arthur released a swarm of fireflies into the room to make peace. Then the two went into the forest to talk. Although warned not to enter, Arthur said if they met bad guys, just run deeper in. The wolves they had released before had become friends, so they weren't scared. Sitting and watching the stars for a while, Tessia started getting sleepy and was also scared of ghosts. She asked about the human kingdom, and Arthur said he didn't know much since he lived in a remote area and never went to the city. When asked why he didn't stay here, Arthur said it was because he wanted to see his family again. When the 4-month period ended, he would have to say goodbye to his master and everyone. His master even gave Arthur. As for humans, Arthur said he wasn't sure since he lived in a remote area and had never been to the city. When asked why he didn't just stay here, Arthur said he still wanted to see his family. When the 4-month deadline ended, he had to say goodbye to the master and everyone. The master also gave Arthur a compass engraved with the RUTHLESS family crest. With this gift, if Arthur ever returns, he won't have to worry about being arrested. When asked about Tessia, her parents were just as sad. When the teleport gate opened, Arthur thought Tessia wouldn't come to see him off, but she appeared right after. Tessia told him to eat well and take good care of himself. She hugged Arthur first, saying she would definitely feel lonely. They both promised to meet again someday. Arthur said goodbye to the 3 clan representatives and quickly went to the house where his parents and sister, the girl who was still alive when the door opened, it was his adorable little sister, Eleanor. The moment Arthur saw his parents, he burst into tears because he was finally home. Both were stunned, so they immediately welcomed him back. After a long time, Alice introduced Arthur as Eleanor's older brother. She kept asking Arthur questions, and even if he wanted to answer, he couldn't. Reynold told his wife to stop bombarding him with questions and let their son catch his breath. Eleanor then approached to get to know the brother her parents had told her about every night before bed. Arthur told the little girl he was very happy to finally meet his sister. Also, it seemed the cute little dragon Sylvia was pretty fascinated by Eleanor. Later, Arthur recounted everything that happened in the Tessia kingdom to his parents. Although they trusted him, he still decided not to tell them about Sylvia. Arthur explained that he survived the fall because he unconsciously used magic. Then by chance, he met Tessia, and thanks to the Tessia, his illness was completely cured. Alice was worried the illness might relapse, but Arthur reassured her that the pain was just a side effect of awakening his mana core too early. Also, he found Sylvie near a mana beast's cave, whose mother was badly injured and near death, so he decided to save the little one. Reynold believed his son without hesitation, because the most important thing was that his beloved son had come home safely. He also wanted to know what stage Arthur's mana core was. Arthur, but his wife reminded him not to bother their son with nonsense right after returning home. Dad also said he was now working as a security trainer, Arthur, an auction house in the city. Arthur was surprised that not only had his father's beard grown long, but his work had also developed very well. Reynolds said that 2 years ago, his mana core had reached a deep orange color. Mana colors rank in order: black, red, orange, yellow, silver, white. Each color has 3 levels: deep, standard, and light. Reynolds also wanted to know what color Arthur's mana core had reached. When he heard his son's was light red, Reynolds was shocked because the kid was about to catch up to him. On the other hand, Alice was delighted because she knew her son was a genius. Suddenly, a man entered the house to ask if Reynolds' son had truly returned. It turned out to be Vincent Helstia, the auction house manager, or basically Reynolds' boss. Arthur immediately showed refined manners that impressed Vincent and his wife, Tabitha. Their daughter, Lilia, was introduced in hopes they would get along well. Arthur hoped so too, but Lilia was completely captivated by Sylvie. The Halsey family owned this mansion and asked permission to go outside to the garden with their son to exchange techniques. Vincent didn't think this would cause any issues, so both families went outside together. Actually, he was very curious and asked Alice if Arthur's mana core really was light red. Alice said she wasn't sure, but probably yes, because Arthur always learned very fast. He even awakened his mana core Arthur just 3 years old. Meanwhile, Reynolds told Arthur that even the prodigies admitted to the prestigious Sirius Academy only reached deep red by age 12. Now, both were ready for training to begin. Arthur started unleashing a series of attacks that surprised his dad. Reynolds also showed the fire element he had awakened. The mages in this world seemed to specialize in certain elements. A conjurer soon. That even geniuses admitted to the prestigious Sirius Academy only reached dark red Arthur age 12. Now both were ready for the training to begin. Arthur started unleashing a series of attacks that surprised his father. Reynolds wasn't any less and showed off the fire element he had awakened. The mages in this world seem to specialize in certain elements. A conjurer quickly realizes which element suits them and begins training to control it. However, for all mentors, this is not so clear, so they have to work really hard to discover their compatible element. In Arthur's past life, there was something very similar to magic called chi. Unlike elements, chi is something you can control yourself. Moreover, in that world, there was no innate elemental weakness. Although, Arthur realized it was pretty damn stinky. The head of the family didn't say much and immediately took Sylvie to bathe and clean properly. In a way, this is quite similar to the all-mentors in this world. The fight between father and son grows more intense, making everyone watching outside wince. This moment, Arthur seriously begins to use his incredible power. Reynolds realizes that this is high-level fire magic being unleashed by Arthur, and it doesn't stop there suddenly. Water from the fountain starts moving toward Vincent, the dad. He truly feels like nothing makes sense anymore. In the last moment, Reynolds pushes back the attack and immediately praises his beloved son for controlling not just fire, but water as well. Now everyone has to admit Arthur is truly a genius. When the family gathers, Vincent excitedly asks Reynolds if he sees the bright future his son holds. He even suggests enrolling Arthur in Sirius Academy. Vincent has heard that this is the most prestigious magic academy, not just in the country but across the continent. Tabitha advises, following Vincent's advice, and they are happy to fully sponsor the boys' tuition. Alice can't believe they made such an offer, especially after all the help they've already given her family, plus she wonders what the academy would say since Arthur is only 8 years old. Vincent reassures that it's not a problem because he knows the academy's principal. But Arthur cuts off the conversation, feeling this is his future so he has the right to speak up. It's been years since he last saw his family, so the boy wants to put this matter aside for now. Then Vincent understands and apologizes because the kid is totally right. On the way back to his room, Arthur is told by Lilia that if he keeps wandering like this, he'll get lost. She tells him to follow her. Then the two go to where the servants work, but Arthur is surprised to see Lilia acting more open than usual, while she's usually quiet in front of her parents. One maid tells him that Lilia often comes here when stressed because, even though her parents aren't mages or anything, they desperately hope Lilia will awaken her magical powers. Truly, a poor girl burdened with a heavy weight. That night, Alice still can't believe her son has finally returned. but she also says she treasures that he's still the polite, kind, and sweet boy he always was. As for Reynold, he believes Arthur will become a top-tier mage, but that's a story for later. He also clarifies that Vincent's words come from a place of wanting the best for the boy, so don't take it personally. The next morning, Arthur runs downstairs only to get hit straight in the face by 2 grapefruits. Yep, those are his old friends from Reynold visiting. After hearing the news that the boy has returned, everyone is beyond happy, even nearly crying from the emotion. The adventure group starts retelling countless adventures they just had in the border city of Eston. Meanwhile, Arthur realizes he knows nothing about the kingdom of Sapine, let alone the vast continent of Decaden. He starts thinking maybe becoming an adventurer to explore more of the world isn't a bad idea. Finally, the scene shifts to Lilia sitting alone on a chair, seemingly lost in thought. The next morning, Arthur is diligently training as usual, when Sylvie runs over. And only now does he truly feel like he's officially back home. But while petting the little dragon, Arthur notices it stinks badly. The head of the household wastes no time and immediately takes Sylvie to be thoroughly cleaned, because it can't be allowed to stink and run around this beautiful mansion. Speaking of which, it seems Vincent's family auction house, because there was no way to let it stink and run around this beautiful mansion. Speaking of which, it seems the Vincent family's auction house was doing very well. Arthur also started thinking about the maid's stories regarding the pressure Lilia was under. After bathing, Sylvie not only looked shiny but also gave off Vincent's workshop was thriving. Arthur also started thinking about the maids, who talked about the pressures Lilia was facing. After his bath, Sylvie not only looked shiny but also gave off a pleasant fragrance. Suddenly, all the girls in the house appeared and said it was time for Arthur to be as clean as Sylvie. They took him to a shop so the gay barber could cut his hair. About an hour later, Arthur returned, with a new hairstyle and outfit, looking extremely dashing. Everyone showered him with compliments because Arthur looked completely different from an hour ago. Tabitha thought this was the perfect moment for him to get familiar with the city for a bit. Then they started touring and shopping everywhere. However, while Arthur was happily standing near a statue, some annoying guys threw something Arthur him to mock Lilia. They said those annoying guys were students from the serious magic academy in this area. Those wearing that uniform were treated like royalty, so they looked down on everyone else. While thinking about this, Arthur suddenly felt something strange as he approached the shop. Then Tabitha said those were monster cores, capable of boosting the owner's power. This surprised Arthur, because in the Tessia clan's kingdom, he had never seen this before. Tabitha explained the effect varies by type. If the core held the monster's will, its price could reach 100 gold coins. His mother also said that amount could provide a comfortable life for 250 years, back in their homeland. Tabitha mentioned some such cores would be auctioned next week, so she'd arrange for Arthur to attend. He thanked her but internally felt satisfied with Sylvia's monster will already. Lilia then suggested Mom buy that core so she could awaken her magic, but of course, Tabitha disagreed with taking shortcuts. Not to mention, they're insanely expensive, and no matter how much he begged, his mother firmly refused. Only now did Arthur realize it seemed Lilia wasn't pressured by her mother. Could it be the suffering she endured came from her father's expectations? However, the moment he looked away, Lilia vanished. When Arthur searched, he found her staring intently. Arthur, one of cheap monster cores, Arthur the weapon shop. He explained that owning a monster core didn't mean you could use magic. Still, Lilia felt she should try but was immediately stopped by Arthur to avoid any bad incidents. Lilia felt Arthur was special and couldn't understand the feelings she was going through. No matter how much she begged her parents, they wouldn't let her touch that. While trying to watch, Lilia accidentally bumped into a serious Magic Academy student, which made them angry. The shop owner knew those guys were looking for trouble but didn't dare say a word, instead hiding in a corner. The kids started getting aggressive, wanting to start a fight. Just then, both mothers appeared. The shop owner warned that they were academy students, so it was best not to interfere. But Tabitha asked if he knew what would happen if they harmed a Halstia family daughter. The students heard that the family was a major sponsor of the academy and wielded significant influence. If the headmaster found out, they'd definitely be expelled, so they immediately backed off but didn't forget to taunt, only know how to buy their position with money. When they returned home, Vincent was told the whole story. Lilia apologized to him for not intending to cause trouble. He said it was okay since things hadn't gone too far. He also mentioned that this wouldn't affect Arthur's academy enrollment, though no decision had been made yet. But Vincent still said their family had donated a lot to the academy, so a small incident like this wouldn't cost him the chance. Lilia asked her father if he planned to send Arthur to the academy in her place. Because she hadn't awakened yet, he abandoned her to choose Arthur. Lilia angrily yelled she hated both of them and walked away. She thought about the pressure she was under, but just then, May appeared saying her parents were very worried. She also wanted to apologize but thought speaking up might be misunderstood as arrogance. Ultimately, it was Lilia who apologized first and admitted she was jealous. The reason was a peer suddenly appeared with overwhelming power, drawing all her parents' attention. She also realized both of them then left. Lilia thought about the pressure she was under, but just then May appeared and said her parents were very worried. By the way, he also wanted to apologize but thought if he spoke up, it might be misunderstood as arrogance. In the end, it was Lilia who apologized first, also admitting she was jealous. The reason was because someone her age suddenly appeared with overwhelming power and drew all her parents' attention. She also realized it was her fault for not being able to awaken the magic inside her. Arthur understood the cold feeling of being drowned in the darkness, of regret. That's why he took Lilia's hand and said he had high expectations for her. Even her parents knew she had worked very hard, and Arthur himself was just someone who suddenly appeared with superior power, so he got more attention. After chatting happily for a while, Lilia regained her spirits. However, Arthur is asking if it's true that Lilia ran away from home. Arthur admits he took her to a place where she could train to awaken her magical power. Vincent is angry that Arthur did this without consulting him first. Mom says it was Lilia's decision because she knew if they discussed it with them, she would never be determined. Then Arthur hands them a letter from their daughter. Lilia explains that before she could use magic, she always felt like a burden to her parents. That's why she wanted to become a skilled mage so she could return to them. Vincent feels very regretful. He had always believed that becoming a mage would bring her a happy future, so he regrets it deeply. He regrets everything because even without magic, Lilia is still his beloved daughter. But after hearing these words from her father, Lilia stepped out from inside. She immediately apologized for using this method to test her parents. Arthur also confessed that he planned this because he understood losing a child is a pain worse than death. For a parent, having caused his family pain for a nearly similar reason, he knows it was wrong. But Vincent cut him off, believing he himself is responsible for everything. He admits he was careless wanting to send Arthur to the academy right after reuniting with family. So, he also apologized to everyone and told his daughter she doesn't have to go to the academy if she doesn't want to, because even if she's not a mage, mom and dad will still try their best to make her happy. Lilia says her father is mistaken. Actually, she really wants to join Sirius Academy. Even if she can't now, she'll try hard to learn how to use magic. Seeing the family's issues resolved, Arthur spoke up. I can help awaken Lilia's mana, which stunned everyone. For some reason, little sister Tabitha also joined the first lesson led by Arthur. Tabitha knows mana is a genius, but she's never heard of anyone doing this before. Arthur asked them to focus on their breathing, then inhale deeply and exhale slowly. After that, close their eyes and keep that state until they see light in the darkness. Eleanor was the first to see the light, but it immediately disappeared because she lost focus on her breath. Lilia still saw nothing, but Arthur told her to keep following him. If his theory is right, this could work. He gently touched their backs and told them they might feel a bit of warmth, but they must continue breathing as instructed. Finally, Lilia saw the light, proving that her first step of awakening was successful, making her parents visibly emotional. Soon after, everyone threw a celebration because Lilia truly awakened her mana. Of course, the reward was the fatty roast duck she had been craving. Though it might take 2 to 3 years for her energy to stabilize, with the happiness Lilia felt, it didn't matter anymore. Tonight's event, Arthur the Healthy Auction House, is highly anticipated by nobles and adventurers alike. Arthur knows many will seize this chance to buy rare collectibles. As for Mr. Reynolds, head of security, he's ordering his subordinates to be absolutely vigilant, making no mistakes. Vincent welcomed everyone and introduced the VIP guests of the gala. The first was King Blaine Glader, followed by Queen Priscilla, Prince Curtis, and Princess Kathleen. The royal family's presence excited everyone. Then the auction house's 10-year anniversary celebration officially began. Arthur felt nostalgic because this scene was just craving a little snack back then. Although it might take 2 to 3 years for energy to stabilize, with the happiness Lilia felt now, that no longer mattered. Tonight's event, Arthur the Healthy Auction House, was highly anticipated by nobles and adventurers alike. Arthur knew many would seize this chance to buy rare collectibles. As for Mr. Reynolds, in charge of security, he was ordering his subordinates to be on absolute high alert, not to make any mistakes. Vincent welcomed everyone and introduced the VIP guests of the banquet. First was King Blaine Glader, followed by Queen Priscilla, Prince Curtis, and Princess Kathleen. The royal family's presence excited everyone. Then the 10th anniversary celebration of the auction house officially began. Arthur felt a bit nostalgic because this scene reminded him of some memories from his previous life. While security forces were actively working everywhere, Vincent began showcasing the products. Seeing Arthur's interest, his mother asked if anything caught his eye. Of course, Arthur was fully aware everything here was insanely expensive, so there was no way he could buy anything. Speaking of which, he suddenly realized he had no idea where little Sylvia had run off to. Meanwhile, the baby dragon was lost, unable to find his way back when unfortunately a stranger appeared blocking the path. Back to Vincent, he was introducing a young world lion, a very powerful mana beast with incredible growth potential, Arthur leased grade A. Prince Curtis begged his dad to buy it, and King Blaine Glader didn't hesitate to set the price Arthur 1,000 gold coins. He immediately wanted it to be his son's companion for the near future. Arthur, the same time, little dragon Sylvie seemed to be in danger as the old man kept trying to lure him. Luckily, Arthur appeared just in time to stop the bad situation. Judging by his clothes, it was clear the man was from King Blaine Glader's court. Arthur gently requested he leave Sylvie alone because Sylvie was his pet. The old man, seeing his plan to lure fail, then openly tried to steal. He threatened Arthur, ordering him to hand over the special creature. As a royal mage, the old man was confident he could maximize Sylvie's potential. He even unleashed a fire magic blast to threaten Arthur into giving up the baby dragon Arthur any cost. Of course, Arthur had no intention of obeying this jerk and turned to walk away. The man, furious, threatened that opposing the royalty would come with a heavy price. He even wanted Arthur's parents to be held responsible for this. As soon as Arthur heard someone threatening his family, a fierce killing intent erupted from him, affecting not only the surrounding area but spreading throughout the entire auction house. Sensing the danger, all the guards immediately went on high alert. King Blaine Glader remained calm and raised his voice, demanding the owner of that power to step out of hiding. The mage was scared shitless, while Arthur realized he'd just caused a huge problem. Moments later, King Blaine Glader summoned Reynold to punish him for failing to catch the intruder. Reynold was ready to accept any punishment, but the old mage begged his majesty for mercy if Arthur agreed to hand over the mana beast for him to raise. King Blaine Glader explained that the opportunist's name was Sebastian, who had served the royal family for many years and had earned many merits, so he wanted to reward him as he wished. But Reynold bowed and apologized to his majesty, saying he had nothing to do with his son's companion. King Blaine Glader then turned to ask Arthur what he thought. But Arthur, that moment, the knights accompanying him scolded Arthur for not bowing when speaking to his superiors. Arthur said he didn't intend to negotiate, believing nothing could replace Sylvie. King Blaine Glader then tried to trade the world lion he had bought today for the baby dragon, but Arthur once again firmly refused to hand over Sylvie to anyone. King Blaine Glader's face darkened, and he asked one last time if Arthur would yield. But Arthur wasn't scared, and instead asked back how much he would sell his own son for. The enraged old mage ordered 2 knights to attack Arthur and steal Sylvie. But they weren't pushovers and immediately crushed the weaklings. Sebastian tried to take advantage of the chaos and strike secretly, but Arthur activated his time-freezing ability, making everything stand still. The mage was completely confused, but in a flash, Arthur broke one of his legs. He screamed desperately for help, but no one responded. Arthur's cold steel gaze warned one last time that if he didn't know his place, he'd learn what a festival really meant. Immediately after, Arthur's power vanished and he collapsed unconscious on the floor. After waking up, Arthur realized he had exceeded the limits when using Sylvia's time control power. "Sorry, Your Majesty, I have nothing to do with the heir's companion." King Blaine Glader then turned to ask Arthur what he thought. But Arthur that moment, the knights following him scolded Arthur for not bowing when speaking to a superior. Arthur said he had no intention of negotiating, believing nothing could replace Sylvie. King Blaine Glader then wanted to trade the world lion he bought today for the baby dragon, but Arthur firmly stated again that he had no intention of handing over Sylvie to anyone. King Blaine Glader's face darkened, almost growling, as he asked one last time if he would yield, but Arthur wasn't scared and even shot back, asking how much King Blaine Glader would accept for selling his own child. The old mage lost his temper and immediately ordered 2 knights to attack Arthur to seize Sylvie, but they weren't amateurs and instantly beat those weaklings down. Sebastian took advantage of the chaos to sneak an attack, but Arthur activated his time-freezing ability, stopping everything in place. The guy was utterly confused by this, but in a flash Arthur broke one of his legs. He screamed desperately for help, but no one responded. Arthur, with cold iron eyes, gave a final warning. If he didn't know his place, he'd teach him what a real festival feels like. Immediately after, Arthur's power vanished and he collapsed unconscious on the floor. When he woke up, Arthur knew he had exceeded his limits using Sylvia's time control power, so he had to pay the price. His mother recounted that the auction house plunged into chaos Arthur that time, and she had tried to treat her son as quickly as possible. As a mother, she felt like she had passed through a very long time seeing her child lying, unconscious like that. Afterward, they went out shopping together to help Arthur get some exercise. Suddenly, he had to pay the price. His mother recalled that the auction house descended into chaos, and she tried to treat her son as soon as possible. As a mother, she felt like she had lived through a long time watching her son lie, unconscious. Then they went out shopping together to help Arthur move his joints. Suddenly, he saw a cute item and wanted to buy it for his little sister Eleanor. Alice also revealed she was currently running a few businesses with Tabitha's help and had built many connections to distribute products everywhere, grocery stores throughout the city. After returning home, the mother and son overheard Mr. Reynolds having a serious conversation with someone. The story was that after his son almost died, King Blaine Glader simply called it a minor accident and sent compensation money. The two night soldiers who attacked others without orders were fired, but Reynolds disagreed with just letting them go like that. The representative reminded him that Arthur had dared to challenge King Blaine Glader first, so this was the best resolution, and they wouldn't pursue responsibility for letting the intruders slip in. Reynolds and Arthur stayed calm, not wanting to make a big deal, so they tried to probe the royal mage's situation. The representative said Sebastian was also dismissed and taken for treatment on his leg as soon as he woke up. Again, he insisted Arthur attacked him, but after thorough investigation, the council concluded that a backlash of magic from the guards hit Sebastian, disrupting his magic. King Blaine Glader was deeply saddened by the incident and decided to apologize to show goodwill. He also commented that Arthur had exceptional talent but clearly needed to learn better manners because not everyone was as forgiving as King Blaine Glader. So after some confrontation, Arthur and his father accepted the apology and compensation money. That night, Arthur began reflecting. All that had happened was a reminder that he was still just a kid in this world. To face the power of an entire nation, he needed corresponding strength. A few days later, while walking, Arthur spotted a strange-faced bird. Arthur chased after it and bumped into an old woman dressed like a witch. She suddenly said she had been waiting for him for a long time. Sirius Academy is known as the most prestigious magic school everyone dreams of attending, and the old woman before Arthur now held all the power there, Director Cynthia Goodsky. Having heard a lot about Vincent's nephew, she wanted to test if he was as exaggerated as said. The principal was surprised Arthur showed no fear, nor hesitation during the test, and Arthur knew he had to show Arthur at least some power to make a good impression. So he immediately used wind magic to gather some stones and hurled them forward. However, with just a wave of her hand, the old woman stopped the attack. Seeing the move was ineffective, Arthur switched to earth magic, but was still easily pushed back as if nothing happened. Arthur hadn't expected her strength and began to get serious. But no matter what he threw, the principal swatted it away like brushing off a fly. So Director Cynthia Goodsky commented Arthur was a bit overconfident, but truly, as Vincent said, his combat skills and magic were outstanding. The principal continued the final test by casting sound magic, causing Arthur to clutch his head in pain. After trying to endure it, the old woman stopped and announced Arthur had passed. In fact, she was eager to personally train him. When asked if he had anything else to say, Arthur set one condition, that she use the Academy's influence to protect his family. Only then would he accept enrollment and consider her his official mentor. Also, Arthur wouldn't start immediately but would begin Arthur the right age 3 years later. The principal wanted to know why he chose this, and Arthur said he wanted to live life to the fullest. To do that, he would become an adventurer to learn everything he could about this world. The principal, outwardly, agreed but asked Arthur to convince his family before making a deal. However, a few days, to do that, you'll become an adventurer to learn everything possible about this world. The principal, on the surface, agreed but requested Arthur to convince his family before proceeding with the agreement. However, a few days later, Alice's mother started yelling loudly because her son wanted to leave home to do something dangerous. Mr. Reynolds even suggested finding someone to watch over his son but got scolded badly by his wife. Arthur felt sorry for Mr. Reynolds and had to say to his mother that although he would set off on an adventure, he would try to visit home regularly. His little sister was also sad when about to leave her big brother, but Arthur said he would stay a bit longer before going. Actually, he just wanted to explore more, the world around him, to experience some adventures like Mom and Dad had when they were young. Alice understands that, but she also tells her son to share everything with her, no secrets. These words hit Arthur because he really wants to share some things with his mom, but clearly, there are some things he can't say out loud. So they called their old friends to see if anyone was willing to babysit Arthur. Adam was the first to refuse, not wanting to be a babysitter and worried his messy personality wouldn't fit the kid. While others were thinking it over, Jasmine volunteered for the job. Angela was surprised because Jasmine usually prefers solitude, but she explained that if it's for Arthur's benefit, it's no problem. Mr. Reynolds happily said that if we consider combat skills, no one fits better than Jasmine, so the group agreed to have her as Arthur's companion and babysitter on his upcoming adventure. Later, Arthur was taken to the Auction Guild's storage to find the perfect sword for the Adventure Guild entrance exam. Although there were many choices, Arthur really didn't see any sword that suited him. He started to realize most people in this world are enhancers, so their weapons tend to be big and heavy. Right then, Sylvie called him over to show something like an old staff she just found. Arthur was skeptical, but when he lifted it, he was surprised by how heavy it was. After fiddling with it for a bit, he decided to try channeling his element into it, and suddenly, this strange weapon reacted with his dragon energy and transformed into a stunning light sword. Arthur felt like he'd just scored something great and swung Arthur a nearby wooden barrel to test it. On the lower part of the blade, he saw the phrase Ballad of Dawn along with some strange symbols that looked like the initials of the previous owner. Suddenly, the sword emitted a jolt of electricity that startled Arthur. When he held it again, magically, the sword adjusted its size and weight perfectly for its new owner. Clearly, this was thanks to Sylvie, so he made sure to praise her for finding this treasure. Though he'd wielded many great swords in his past life, none were as perfect as this one. That moment, Arthur recalled a story about a blacksmith who once made a staff meant for only one person. Hearing Renan call, Arthur hastily grabbed another sword just for show. Reynolds tried it a bit and found it quite suitable for his son because it was light. Vincent noticed Arthur also had a staff strapped across his waist and curiously asked about it. Arthur knew he needed to act normal, so he said it was just a heavy staff he happened to find on the ground. Vincent told his assistant to check because he didn't remember buying anything like that. The assistant immediately recognized it because an old, grumpy man suddenly shouted no one was worthy, threw it back, and left. Even after several appraisals, everyone said it was just a plain staff. Arthur saw the assistant wanted to take his precious sword for another appraisal, so he put on his cutest face for Vincent. The kid even called him Uncle Vincent, so in the end, he got the appraisal for free without any suspicion. The following days, Arthur enjoyed life with his family. Until his 9th birthday, everyone threw an epic party. After eating, it was time to open gifts. Mom, Alice, gave him a magic glove that can heal using embedded gems. The Vincent family gifted a precious pair of matching rings. Their power is that if Arthur ever runs out of mana, Alice's ring will glow. The gift from the Double Horn Squad was a scroll that the Vincent family gave a precious pair of rings. Their power is if Arthur ever runs out of mana, Alice's ring will light up. The gift from the Twin Horns team was a scroll grant, capable of recording sound. Arthur just needs to channel mana into it and leave a message. After his mother receives it, she has one chance to respond. He's deeply grateful for these amazing gifts. He will depart tomorrow but promises never to disappoint everyone and to be as careful as possible to return safely. Arthur started to think that in this life, he truly had family, friends, and people, hoped never to lose the sense of security that feeling brought. That's why Arthur wanted to become stronger to fight and protect everyone. Before setting off, Mr. Reynolds also advised him not to try doing everything alone. The whole family hoped he would succeed and reach his goals. After deciding, the protagonist's adventure in the new world finally began. Right after, Jasmine took Arthur to the Serious Adventurers Guild to register for the youth ranking test. She was wearing a cool mask to hide her identity from the royal family. After registering, the receptionist led them to meet the guildmaster. His name was Caspian. He said that normally before the practical test, Arthur needed to take a theory exam and a mana core assessment. However, because Jasmine vouched for him, they'd make an exception this time. By the way, he also reminded them that the last time he met Jasmine's father, it made her uncomfortable. Caspian also said there was no need to use real names. When asked how he wanted to be addressed for registration, Arthur said to call him Arthur. After they shook hands, he realized the man was very strong. On the way to the test site, Jasmine mentioned her father had a close connection with this place. Suddenly, Sylvia appeared with a slightly changed appearance, which made Jasmine curious. Arthur explained he recently discovered the little dragon could shift its form a bit. The skill test area here was a large arena, where registrants had to directly compete against judges for evaluation. In front was a guy with glasses named Elijah, but as soon as he stepped out, the judge immediately declared him a B-rank adventurer without a fight, leaving others confused. Next was a mage with an annoying face named Lucas. He was so confident he bluntly asked the judge why he wasn't allowed to skip the test and rank up straight to A. This kid was only 11 years old, but already a pale orange core mage specializing in fire attribute, and even more special, he seemed to be from the Tessia tribe. Arthur first, his skills seemed powerful, but just seconds later, Lucas lost control, causing flames to engulf the entire arena. Luckily, the judge intervened in time to keep everyone safe. Just as the results were about to be announced, Lucas, unhappy, tried to sneak attack the judge but was stopped by Arthur. Lucas was pissed, claiming the test was invalid because someone interfered, but in the end, the female judge didn't think highly of him and decided to give him a B rank before sending him out with a spell. Now it was the protagonist's turn, but the judge was surprised because Arthur's registration had no information, Arthur all. Besides, the mana flow Arthur released was unusually strong, so Guildmaster Caspian decided to personally evaluate this case. Having a second A-rank mage who was also the head of the largest adventurer guild branch in Sap and Steppen was pretty unreasonable for Arthur. The match finally started, but the studio god didn't bother showing the fight scene and cut straight to Arthur receiving his B-rank adventurer card. Jasmine congratulated him because now her uncle had officially become a true adventurer. Meanwhile, other judges expressed dissatisfaction with the guildmaster for awarding so many young people B ranks today. Caspian reminded them of an event 6 months ago, Arthur's Sirius, when the first youth competition between 3 races was held. The Sappan Kingdom officially lifted the ban on elves and dwarves becoming adventurers. Caspian also revealed Lucas was a half-elf, though his origin was unknown, likely his mother was a slave. As for Elijah's case, someone sponsored him an individual Caspian couldn't refuse. Elijah was a human child raised by dwarves in the Dark Kingdom. He was sent here. To this extent made Arthur feel it didn't make any sense. The match finally began, but the studio god skipped the fight scene and went straight to Arthur receiving his B-rank adventurer card. Jasmine congratulated him because now he officially became a true adventurer. Meanwhile, some judges expressed dissatisfaction with the president because too many young people were ranked B today. Caspian reminded them of an event 6 months ago, Arthur's Sirius, when the first youth competition among 3 races was held. The Sappan Kingdom officially lifted the ban on elves and dwarves becoming adventurers. Caspian also revealed Lucas is a half-elf, though his origin is unclear, but likely his mother was a slave. As for Elijah's case, someone sponsored him, and that was a figure Caspian couldn't refuse. Elijah was originally a human child raised by dwarves in the Dark Kingdom. He was sent here to get to know humans and currently serves as the first representative of the Dark Kingdom. Finally, the masked man, Caspian admitted, he didn't know who he was either. The fact that his sponsor belonged to the Fermagat family, the strongest fire mage clan in the kingdom, made things extremely interesting. However, what surprised the president the most wasn't the firepower but Arthur's swordsmanship skills. Even though it was still somewhat clumsy, his potential was truly astonishing. Arthur was a bit pensive after the battle. With the guild leader, he realized he had been too obsessed with the gifted power and neglected the dedicated training that was his strength in his previous life. A moment later, they encountered Elijah along with the arrogant half-demon Lucas, a warning not to be cocky because even within the same rank, there are different levels. Jasmine wanted to stop the argument, but everyone around started whispering about the scene. Lucas decided to leave, not forgetting to warn Arthur that he wouldn't be disrespected again. The two then teleported to the area for low-level adventurers. On the way to their pre-planned target, Arthur was quite surprised to see Jasmine arrive so quickly. Today, nothing went according to his plan, especially during the fight with the guild leader where every move seemed to be countered. Suddenly, they heard a loud explosion nearby. It turned out a monster. A wild boar was aggressively attacking people. Jasmine decided to run with Arthur because that monster wasn't native to this area. After a while, they found a horse carriage, meaning the monster was likely captured before and then escaped. It charged straight Arthur them. Because it was too dangerous, Jasmine tried to buy time for Arthur to get away. Although she managed to, wounded, it was clearly not enough to take it down. Arthur worried about Jasmine and managed to rescue her before she got seriously injured. The monster then shifted its target to attack the wounded. Arthur's past self appeared, urging him to wait for the right moment, to avoid making mistakes again. So he just stood in a ready stance without moving. When the monster charged, the protagonist immediately took it down with his sword and fire magic skills. Once everything was settled, Jasmine teased him a bit because she wanted Arthur to show more obvious concern in situations like that. That night, Jasmine shared that the reason she became an adventurer was to escape from her family, the Flamengo clan, known for producing powerful mages for generations and teaching that fire magic is the strongest element. She was once very proud to be born into that clan. Awakening her magical power earlier than her siblings, her parents had high expectations. But when they found out Jasmine couldn't use fire magic, they started treating her like a failure. Arthur was angry hearing this because he knew well that there are many levels of mana cores. And there's clearly no hierarchy between elements, it all depends on the user. Jasmine laughed because she had never seen him so mad before. He was a bit embarrassed but thought to himself that Jasmine's story reminded him of his own past. Indeed, Arthur had also been called a failure. Jasmine continued, saying that everyone in the fearsome duo party had scolded her for fighting exactly like Arthur did today, and thanks to that, she met her current friends, helping her improve herself in many aspects of life. After Jasmine fell asleep, Arthur wondered if he could change. But then he told himself that no matter how hard it gets, he must do it, to protect his loved ones. Elsewhere, Tessia was using a crystal orb to watch little Arthur, who was very annoyed because her crush kept switching from girl to girl. While she was ranting, her grandfather appeared scary. Furry ferret, he said that instead of being jealous, why not start your own journey? Arthur's Serious Academy. 2 years then passed, and people started talking about a mysterious masked swordsman, the little guy traveling with the Flamewood daughter, feeling little Arthur, very annoyed because his crush kept switching girls one after another. While complaining, his grandfather appeared scared the hell out of him. The furry ferret said instead of being jealous, why not start your own journey? Arthur's Serious Academy. And so 2 years passed, and people kept whispering about a mysterious masked swordsman, the small guy with the Flamewood daughter, with unbelievable strength. Thus, the first season of the Reincarnated Emperor ends here. Thanks everyone for watching and supporting.